Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I am your host, Ozzy Ostwald. UFOs, extraterrestrial life, historic Vatican documents, scientists and faith, digital infrastructures, and new religions. These are some of the fascinating topics our guest, Dr. Diana Walsh Pasulka, studies in the effort to understand religion in the world today. Dr. Pasulka looks at religion differently than we're sometimes accustomed to understanding faith, and her work offers some fascinating conclusions. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming back. You're a repeat guest.
That's right.
On
I had a
Religion
great
and
time
Life,
last time.
and one of our most popular, I might say.
Great.
And since you were here last, your book has recently been released.
Yes.
By Oxford University Press. It's called American Cosmic, UFOs, Religion and Technology.
Yes, it was released February 20th and doing really well for an academic book.
And it's a fascinating read. I got
you.
to spend some time with it last evening and found it very difficult to put down, which is also unusual for an academic book.
Yes,
right?
it is, yes.
Now, we're both religious studies scholars. So if I were to describe to you a story that begins with a quest for a holy relic, that takes the main characters around the world to the other side of the world, includes a spiritual transformation, and then returns the characters back to where they began. Sounds very familiar, doesn't it?
It really does.
It sounds like Joseph Campbell's hero journey.
It does, the hero's journey.
But that's exactly what your book does.
You know, you mentioned that this morning, and I didn't intend that. And in fact, I hadn't even thought about that, even though I teach Joseph Campbell in my courses. So when you said that to me, I was shocked that it was so obvious that I didn't see it. But you know, when I began the book, I've said this in other interviews as well, the book kind of took off on its own.
Right.
And I felt like I was just chasing it, keeping up with it. You know, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. How do I think about that?
Yeah.
And even the last chapter, the book was finished. Then I went to Rome to do some work at the Vatican Secret Archive. And I didn't think that this would end up being another chapter in the book, but it was so incredibly perfect for the book that I talked my editor into adding this last chapter. Yeah,
and it even includes a little plot twist at
does.
the end. So it's really, the book, it's a really well-researched academic book, but it reads almost like a well-plotted novel, I think.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. They say that it looks like, you know, kind of religious studies meets Da Vinci Code type thing. Yeah. And totally unintended.
Well, I want to return to the secret Vatican archives toward the end, but first, let's talk about the UFO angle, because I think this is such genius on your part. You're writing about UFOs and people who have some experience or belief in UFOs, but you're writing about that not to uncover some sort of UFO conspiracy, but rather to better understand religion, I think.
Yes, as a case study.
As a case study. So how does the study of UFOs help us to, I guess, understand the inexplicable, maybe, and to bring into the forefront how we understand religions and how we understand the inexplicable in religion?
Right, that's a great question. So what I decided to do when I decided to turn my research lens from Catholicism to the study of UFOs was that I noticed that a lot of religions many times begin with what's called a contact event. And a contact event is when a person comes into contact with the sacred, the inexplicable. And oftentimes this happens around a hierophany, which is a place where the sacred shows itself. Say an angel, like a Marian apparition. An angel or the Virgin Mary appears and somebody sees that. And then you have interpretations of that. And, you know, then you have, you know, basically believers and then a tradition of that event. Books about that event, dogma about that event. So then these are the layers of religion. And so
you've just described how a religion develops really from conception into full development.
Right. It usually begins with this hierophany or this contact event, or as you put it, this sacred artifact or Holy Grail or something like that. And so what I wanted to do, because I'm fascinated, I grew up in California. I was a graduate student during the .com boom in California, Silicon Valley. And this is something that I've always been fascinated with, how our new infrastructure of digital technology, the screens everywhere, the iPhone even, right? And, as kind of the icon of this new age and new era, how this is going to impact religion. And what I decided to do was use the UFO belief system as a new form of religion, because I think that religion changes form with the environment. I mean, you can see this as religious studies scholars. We can see this in ancient Judaism, when there was the exile and, and then Judaism moving into a book religion and things like that. So, the book religions, the religions of the book, are different than other religions that exist in other environments. So I'm saying that this belief in this religiosity in the UFO, which is a hierophany, because when people see the UFO, it's an inexplicable event. They don't necessarily want to see it, by the way, but they do see it, and then they see the UFO, and they do an interpretation, and then what I found was that the same types of things would happen, that you would have people interpreting it, it would then be on TV, or it would become a media event, and people would then see it and believe it, and then different interpretations would come about, and different even dogmas with respect to the UFO. And so I used the UFO as a case study of how our new way of being, basically the infrastructure of technology, has impacted religion. And what I've argued is that it's a new religiosity, it's a new form of religion. Yeah,
so, and to use your analogy of, or how religions develop, so if people see something they can't explain in the sky, that's one thing, right? But then the real crucial part of the development is the interpretation. Right? The way that thing is perceived, and then the implications that might have. So the interpretations then, I guess, play a crucial role in turning this into a religious type of experience.
They do, absolutely, yes.
And the thing they're seeing in the sky is the hierophany, right?
Yes, it's like
it is. The sky gods are coming down.
Right?
The Marian apparitions, for example. So there really are some kind of fascinating parallels here. Now, if there are UFOs or people who are seeing UFOs, a UFO in itself is a kind of technology.
Yes, it is.
An advanced technology. So in this new religion you're describing, the hierophany is of technology, and then technology beyond that is helping to spread the belief.
Exactly. Yeah. There are lots of different layers, and the people I chose to focus on, because I met thousands of people who have seen UFOs in the study. I started it in 2012, and it's now 2019, were scientists. People who, very successful scientists, some of whom are scholars of science, and people in the top 5 universities, that kind of thing. So I focused on them because there is often this tension between religion and science. And a lot of people think of those things as completely opposite. But here, what I wanted to do is I wanted to explore that tension, because here you have these believers, right? And they happen to be scientists.
And one of the things I think that you had mentioned as important here is that maybe part of that dynamic is based on the kind of real possibility that the hierophany in this case might have might be real. Right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so there might actually be something behind the hierophany of UFOs, or these sky images, or whatever we're seeing up there.
There's a potential realism here that I think is incredible for a new form of religion.
So we could empirically verify then.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that's unprecedented.
Right.
So in one sense, you have, Catholicism or Judaism, the religions, and you have people who have faith in Jesus walking on water or something like that. Right. And a lot of scientists or a lot of scientific materialists would say, well, that didn't really happen. You have to have faith to believe that. And there are scientists who are Christians and say, well, I have faith. But, you can't prove that that happened. You can't empirically prove that that happened. But NASA has said that they're going to find life. Now, it may not be intelligent life on other planets, but they'll find the microbes, and it will be within 20 years. They have the equipment. They know where to look. So, you know, you have this potential realism here of life that could potentially be true. And I think that that is what gives this new form of religion its bite. Is its potential realism. And you know, think about the X-Files too, and that, you know, that really was kind of like the breaking point in our culture for belief in the UFO and the government conspiracy around it and everything like that. What were the memes? The memes were, I want to believe, or the truth is out there.
Truth is out there.
Yeah, so it's always this deferred kind of realism. It's never, I believe now. It's always, I want to believe. It's never, the truth is here now. It's the truth is out there. So I think that's really interesting because those memes embody my point here that, you know, there is a potential realism to this belief system.
So when NASA finds life, whether it's intelligent or microbial, it will completely upend the worldview of many religions around the world, right? I mean, it's going to be a real challenge.
Well, you know, okay, so this is a good question.
Okay.
And
this might take us to the Vatican, actually, right?
Yeah, I think it will.
Okay.
This is a really good question. A lot of people believe, I don't actually believe that.
Okay.
I believe that religions already have space within their cosmologies and their worldviews to basically appropriate belief in life on other planets.
Okay.
You know, God could still have created life on other planets for religions or Allah, or, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like a lot of in fact, if you look back through religious history, and I do briefly in the introduction, and I basically say people like Emanuel Swedenborg, right, believed, I mean, the bestseller in 1750, he wrote this, and he's a scientist, and he's he's thought to be one of the smartest people in history. And so he wrote a book called, I think it's called Life on Other Planets. And it's still being, by the way, that book is still being published today.
Right.
And that was in 1750.
And maybe I'm wrong here completely, but didn't Swedenborg believe that he transmigrated to other places and other planets?
He was on Venus and the moon, and
which is a kind of science fiction staple, I guess.
It
the
is.
Ability
This astral travel.
astral transport, astral projection or whatever.
Right.
Well, so if all right, so you're being more generous to religion than I am, I guess, and saying that religion will probably be open enough to incorporate these new realities.
Yes.
So let's talk about the Vatican, because I think your trip to the Vatican archives and to the Castel Gandolfo, which is the Vatican Observatory,
yes,
right?
It is. That's where that is.
It's fascinating. So what took you to the Vatican? And we have some images up here that might play while we talk
Sure.
here. But how did that all come about, and how does it intertwine with your UFO research?
Sure.
Oh, here's the Sistine Chapel, by the way. That's just beautiful.
It is. Yeah. So I took pictures, of course, while I was there.
Right.
And so Ozzy, I was finished with my book, okay?
Right.
And I'm a historian of the Catholic culture. So I was asked now my book was in with my editor at the time, so it was all finished. And I had another project going, and the other project was funded by a Catholic philanthropist who was very interested in extraordinary experiences within the Catholic culture. So I had the credentials to get into the secret Vatican and archive, and you have to have certain kinds of credentials to get in, and I have those credentials. So I applied a year in advance, to get in. And I told them what I needed because their archive is vast, and you can't just show up and say I want this manuscript and then they can go find it. It takes them a long time to find it. So I was supposed to look at the levitations of Joseph of Cupertino, who was an Italian saint who was said to have levitated, and also of Mary of Agreda in Spain, who some people might know as the Blue Lady in the Southwest. And she's actually written into the history of the United States as this kind of character, sacred character. So these are two Catholic holy people. One is a saint. One has not become a saint. And I am supposed to go look at their manuscripts, their canonization, which is their trial manuscripts, and find out why one became a saint and one did not. And, Joseph of Cupertino was Italian. He's in the 1600s. They're contemporaries. She's from Spain.
And just to reiterate, now you're not searching for UFOs here.
No.
And this is just a completely different project.
It is.
In your mind. Yeah.
It is.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. But
No.
Yeah, I wanted to make clear that this is
my
something-
book
yeah.
was finished.
Yeah,
I was like,
okay. Yep.
like that with it, right? After so many years, okay? And so what happens is that I had met a scientist who is affiliated with the space program, and I thought, wow, what a cool person to take, because I also was an acquaintance, or is an acquaintance, of Brother Guy Consolmagno.
Who is on our
there's
screen
Brother
right
Guy,
here.
yeah. So
who's a Jesuit, right?
Yes, he's a Jesuit monk, right.
And chief astronomer for the Vatican.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so he actually invited me to come up and look at their archive of space research, because he knew I was doing this project. He didn't know entirely about what it was, because I'm pretty careful about, saying, I'm studying UFOs and can I come to the Vatican? And,
right.
No, I'm not going to say that. So he invited me to look at, so everything that is of space doesn't stay in Rome at the secret archive. It goes up to Castle Gandolfo, and they have their own archive. So he invited me, and I brought the person in my book I have called Tyler, who is affiliated with the space program, our space program, and knows a lot about aerial phenomena. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be neat to have him look at these levitating, saints? And so we did. So we went, and we did get the manuscripts. I did look at them. He was not at first let into the Vatican archive because he didn't have the proper credentials. And I was on the plane going there at the time, and he was already there. And he couldn't get in. And so he texted me, and it took a couple hours, for him to try. And I was worried that I would be seen as suspicious if he showed his credentials as being a space guy, right? I thought maybe they know what we're up to. And so, but he actually had to show his credentials. And after he did, he saw his own face on their screen and realized that he was a part of their, they knew who he was.
He was in the circle.
Yeah, and he got full access. He when I finally got there, boom, we were in, like Flynn. I mean, there's that saying, and we got to go to all kinds of different places. He had already made some friends. So he had made a friend of different priests, one a papal advisor or a former papal advisor. And so we had this really amazing experience that I would not have had I gone by myself.
Right. And you're in the Vatican, you're studying the lives of saints, but also aerial phenomena. And it's just, I think when most of us think about the Vatican, we don't think about physics and astronomy and a real vast collection of scientific work.
Oh, a whole history of science.
And one of the images that flashed on the screen earlier was of a Kepler manuscript. Right?
That's right, yes.
So you were looking at the works of Kepler.
Yeah, a lot of original works of, I mean, what we had there. And by the way, the Vatican archive, Brother Guy is a really nice person, and so you have 3 stages of getting into the secret archive, and it's really, it's a somewhat rigid process. But when we finally went to Castle Gandolfo and got into the other Brother Guy just gave me the keys and said, here you go, you're here for a week, look at anything you want. And so we just had the run of the whole archive, which was probably a bad idea, because I did lose for a time one of the Keplers. Brother Guy.
Priceless manuscript you're talking about here, right?
Yes, right. This original manuscript by Johann Kepler. And thank goodness I remembered where I had misfiled it. So I basically just misfiled it, which wouldn't have happened had, it been a more rigid place. So
right.
I probably changed the rules of the Vatican Observatory.
Maybe now it's not so open-ended. So how far back does this Vatican history of observation of the heavens go? And from the very beginning of the Enlightenment period? Or
absolutely, yes. So it was, to me, it was, it's not as big, of course. It's not miles long like the the secret archive.
Yeah, didn't you say, how big is the secret archive?
The secret archive is miles long.
Miles long?
Yeah, miles long.
Not yards.
Underground.
Miles.
Miles, yeah. That's why you can't just show up, right,
Yeah.
and say, I want this manuscript to look at. But the other archive is about as big as an apartment, and but it's stacked with to the ceiling with books on every subject that has to do with magnetism, space, space research, search for extraterrestrial life, things like that from 1,000 years ago.
And so would some of these manuscripts have at one time or maybe still been considered heretical by the Catholic Church?
Oh, they're not heretical now, which is kind of
now, but at one time.
Oh, absolutely. There are banned manuscripts there. In fact, I think the Copernicus one that Kepler was, I think that one had been banned.
Yeah.
And so it was an irony. In fact, I think they had these prominently displayed even in one part, because they have many copies of these, and they had one prominently displayed. And I took a picture of it because I thought banned books of the Vatican now,
Right.
center stage.
You must have felt pretty special holding those manuscripts. But
it was really amazing.
But you
yeah.
found something in your study of these, well, one saint and
Yes, yes.
Maria,
Yes.
that took you back to where we started.
To New Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the book begins in New Mexico with these two scientists. And
Hunting for the Holy Grail.
Yeah, we're looking for, I'm studying why they believe this because at the time I'm, agnostic about it. And,
Right.
And so I say, we have to be blindfolded on this trip to go to New Mexico, and we're looking for these parts of an alien crash site. So what happens is that back at the archive, I had been studying Maria of Agreda from Spain. And one of her first books, by the way, is a cosmography where she feels that she has traveled up in space and she can see the spinning Earth. And she travels on the wings of angels. And so she traveled on the wings of angels, strangely enough, to New Mexico. And this is in the 1600s.
Is getting creepy now.
It is. It's very creepy.
Right.
And I didn't even make this kind of like the hero's journey. I didn't make the connection
Right.
As I was reading her. And I've heard about her before, of course, because, growing up, Catholic, going to Catholic school, and also being from the West Coast, you just hear about the lady in blue. And so here I was reading about her, but it didn't occur to me that she actually said she was flying to New Mexico, right? And so at the Vatican Observatory, I'm in there with Tyler, the scientist I traveled to New Mexico with. And he was, by the way, having an incredible experience of spiritual experience the whole time we were there, because he never knew that here he was among people who had made their vocation, they were monks and priests who studied astronomy and linked it to the study of God and the sacred. And he had never realized that people like that existed. He's with the space program, which is in itself its own type of, sacred type of thing, right? And so he was just being very heavily impacted by this. Yeah. And so I make the connection that Maria of Agreda had traveled to New Mexico. So I looked at Tyler, and he was there studying about magnetism, turning the pages of this book. And I looked at him and I asked him, did Maria of Agreda actually go to the place in New Mexico that we went? And he looked at me, and you could see the recognition on his face, and then he just kind of looked back down at his book.
So on the wings of angels.
Yeah, on the wings of angels.
She goes right back to where
to New Mexico. And that's when I realized this had to be the last chapter.
Yeah.
And so I took some really cool pictures, and I sent it to my editor, and I said, listen, I know I'm being a big pain, but I think I really have to make this the last chapter.
And they were thrilled, I'm sure.
They
once
agreed.
They read
Yeah, they agreed.
Well, it's a fascinating book, American Cosmic.
Thank you.
I would encourage not only academics to read it because it is a scholarly work, but this is accessible to anyone who's interested in religion or the way religious studies scholars do their work, or UFOs, or mysteries.
A lot of people who this book is very appealing to people who are interested in UFOs. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, I'm anxious to see how you top this. All right, so I'm anxious to see what comes next. Maybe there'll be a sequel here, but this is great work, and I appreciate you joining me again.
Absolutely.
On the program to talk about this, and be on our campus for a couple days. So maybe we can sit down for coffee later on.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you so much.
Oh,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Thank you, Ozzy.
All right, great.
All right.
Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us on Religion and Life here at App TV. I want to thank again Dr. Diana Pasulka. And please join us next time when Dr. Rick Elmore talks about utopias, paradoxes, and miracles, the connection between Christianity and French philosophy. Until then, this is Ozzy Ostwald.